What's up guys, Eddy and Karkat here tonight. So, we're going to be doing something a little bit different, and instead of our usual playthroughs of horror games, we're going to be counting down our top 10 creepypastas. Creepypastas are essentially internet horror stories, passed around on forums and other such sites, in order to both disturb and frighten readers. So here are our picks for the top 10 scariest creepypastas. Some of the images and stories in this video are extremely graphic, so viewer discretion is advised, and remember, we warned you.
Number 10. The SCP Foundation. The SCP Foundation is a fictional government agency devoted to protecting humanity from monsters. Written by numerous authors, the Foundation tracks everything from rocks that come to life to blobs of formless plasma, from birds with human heads to strange lights in the sky. Regardless of the author, each story follows a pattern, and each story is guaranteed to send shivers up your spine. The thing that makes the SCP Foundation so terrifying is not the organization, but the creatures that the Foundation has sworn to protect humanity from. We recommend that you read some of the stories about said creatures for yourselves. You won't be disappointed.
Number 9. Ben Drowned. Ben Drowned, also referred to as the Haunted Majora's Mask, is a disturbing multimedia creepypasta written by Alex Hall. The story focuses on Majora's Mask, a popular installment of the Legend of Zelda series, and a haunted cartridge of said installment. When the author is given a Nintendo 64 by a college buddy, he's excited to begin playing it. He finds several games for his new Nintendo, along with a copy of Majora's Mask that he purchases from a strange old man who refers to him as Ben. Things start out fine when the author plays Ben's save file, but quickly take a dark turn when the game starts to act weird. Random freezes that manifest themselves into terrifying jump scares, cutscenes playing when they're not supposed to, a Link statue following the player, and a character called Skull Kid that stalks you through the maps with a piercing scream. This one scared the fucking crap out of me, so make sure to have a read or a watch if you aren't faint of heart.
Number 8. Laughing Jack. One of the more popular creepypastas, Laughing Jack is a story about a boy and his imaginary friend. But like any creepypasta worth reading, it is, in layman's terms, fucked up. When the author inquires about her son's new friend, whom he calls Laughing Jack, her son describes a clown with a big swirly cone nose that always smiles. After a vivid description of a nightmare, the author awakes to loud banging in the kitchen, wherein she finds her dog hanging dead on a ceiling light and, in true piñata fashion, possessing a sliced open stomach filled with candy. Candy that her son had been eating earlier that day. When confronted by Laughing Jack himself, Mommy Dearest makes a fatal mistake and ends up escaping from what can only be described as a hell house without her son. This story is not for those with coulrophobia, a fear of clowns, or anyone who can't handle blood and mutilation very well. Cancri would certainly have an aneurysm reading this.
Number 7. Candle Cove. Candle Cove is a creepypasta surrounding a children's show by the same name. Several people on a forum recount nightmares and childhood trauma they experienced after watching this disturbing show, and even remember an episode in which all of the characters are screaming wildly, including one character known as the Skin Taker. As if this isn't fucked up enough, one user by the name of MikePainter65 even posted, "I visited my mum today at the nursing home. I asked her about when I was little in the early 70s, when I was 8 or 9, and if she remembered a kids show called Candle Cove. She said she was surprised I could remember that, and when I asked why, she said, because I used to think it was so strange that you would say, 'I'm gonna go watch Candle Cove.' Then you would tune the TV to static and watch dead air for 30 minutes. You had such a big imagination with your little pirate show."
Number 6. The Slenderman. Basically, the Slenderman is a story about a tall, dark figure that lives in the shadows. He has made his way into the background of many photographs, usually around parks, forests, or other unpopulated areas. Although he usually takes the appearance of a faceless man in a black suit, he can also sprout tendrils that steal children, small fluffy animals, and anyone else who happens to wander into his domain. Many games, stories, spin-offs, and even short films have been made about the Slenderman. And it's safe to say that he has become a part of mainstream pop culture. There was a fairly recent incident involving several teenage girls who actually murdered one of their friends in order to appease the Slenderman. I would have to say that the most unsettling thing about this creepypasta is the fact that there are legitimate historical references, Brazilian cave paintings, Egyptian hieroglyphs, and Romanian mythology that all tell of a tall man dressed in black. Is this Slenderman real, or just a manifestation of mankind's most haunting nightmare? Frankly, it's up to you to decide.
Number 5. Mariana Mordor God Glazgov. Mariana Mordor God Glazgov is the name of a YouTube video. If you type it into the search bar, you will most likely find nothing. If you manage to find anything, you'll come across a 20-second video of a man staring at you, followed by a quick close-up shot of this man grinning for the last 2 seconds. But this is only part of the video. The full video, which lasts 2 minutes, was removed by YouTube after 153 people gouged out their eyes, mailed them to YouTube's office in San Bruno, and later committed suicide. Several YouTube staff members claim that one of their co-workers, who watched the full video, began to scream after 45 seconds, and while the rest of them covered their eyes or turned their heads, he continued to watch. One staff member said that just before he turned the video off, he heard a high-pitched drilling sound. YouTube will periodically upload the first 20 seconds of the video, which is regarded as strange but harmless, in order to quell suspicions. And for all we know, the full video may still be lurking in some dark recess of the internet. The original upload is unknown, and the man in the video has yet to be identified. Have fun sleeping.
Number 4. The Russian Sleep Experiment. Set in the late 1940s, the Russian sleep experiment was performed by several researchers that involved sleep deprivation and its effects. They placed 5 prison inmates into a chamber, sealed it, and filled it with something they called Nikolaev gas in order to keep the subjects awake. They monitored them for 15 days with the use of microphones, and for the first several days, everything seemed normal. But starting at the 4-day mark, the subjects ceased conversation with each other, and instead began whispering into the microphones. On day 9, one of the subjects began to scream until he shredded his vocal cords and collapsed on the floor. The whispering from the other subjects continued for another 3 days, and then silence. The researchers were baffled that there could be no sound from the chamber with 5 people inside. After checking the oxygen levels and concluding that all 5 were still living, they made an announcement that they were opening the chamber, and a voice, the first one heard in 3 days, responded, "We no longer want to be freed." The story is rather long, so I'll leave you with a pleasant little nugget of a thought. After seeing what the subjects had done to both themselves and each other, one of the researchers pulled a gun out and shot 2 of the subjects. He aimed his gun at the 3rd subject, and when asked what he was, he replied, "Have you forgotten so easily? We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go to the nocturnal heaven where we cannot tread." He was then shot in the heart, and as he died, he said, "So nearly free." This is a fucking terrifying ordeal of a story that is sure to traumatize because I seriously did not want to read another fucking sentence of it.
Number 3. Ed, Ed, and Eddy, the Lost Episode. Part of the popular Lost Episode genre, Ed, Ed, and Eddy, the Lost Episode describes episode number 34 of the series, which was accidentally released and aired on Cartoon Network one morning at around 2 a.m. The author, who was unfortunate enough to have viewed said episode, recounts a horror story. It starts with Ed and Eddy walking down the main street of their cul-de-sac. Ed Double D is nowhere in sight. Eddy looks angry, and Ed appears to be crying when Kevin appears, riding his trademark bicycle toward Eddy. The screen goes blurry, and there's a low moan heard in the background. The shot repeats again, but this time it's so blurry that it's hard to make out what's going on. The shot cuts to a claymation depiction of Double D laying on Eddy's bed. He gets up and begins to walk around the room in a very awkward and unsettling fashion. As he quickens his pace, he begins to scream. After a short while, the screaming stops, and we're met with a still, silent shot of Eddy's bedroom door for about 3 minutes. Next, we see Jimmy and Sarah at the dentist. Jimmy's headgear is bent and pulled, his face bloodied and mangled, and for some reason he's also missing his arms and legs. As the dentist drags him away from Sarah, the camera stays on his mutilated face for a few moments. Commercials come on. After the break, we're greeted to a very hairy Rolf fisting a cow in a dark shed. The shot loops until blurring into nothing. There's a brief shot of Naz sitting on her couch reading a magazine, and again we see Eddy, who is now walking down the street alone. He smiles and begins to run toward his house. The mood would be considerably lightened if not for the badly played, disturbing violin track blaring in the background. Eddy opens the door to his room, and the shot changes abruptly to Naz once more. Johnny, normally the friendly, weird kid of the cul-de-sac, crawls out from under the couch in a comedic, cartoonish fashion. The only unsettling thing about this is that his eyes appear to be missing. Johnny scrabbles onto the couch and begins to swallow Naz's head, holding it in his jaws until she goes limp. One last shot change to Eddy's room shows Double D lying on the floor, motionless. For the last 3 minutes, there's a still shot of Eddy's house before the next program begins to play on the spot. Who thinks of this shit? Seriously.
Number 2. Smile.jpg. Also referred to as the Smile Dog, this is probably the most fucked up creepypasta I have ever read. More of an urban legend, Smile.jpg is about what it sounds like. It's the image that you see on the screen now. It's a dog, supposedly a manifestation of the devil, and it grins evilly at the viewer, with what looks like a severed hand reaching outward in the background. I'm not entirely sure what the fuck this picture is supposed to represent, evil or death or something else entirely. But like Medusa, it only possesses danger if you look directly at the original. Looking at copies or depictions has no effect, so you can fix your panties and sleep soundly at night. But if one is to look at the original image, the effects are apparently devastating. Paranoia, hallucinations, night terrors, and depression can overwhelm the viewer in a matter of minutes. Oftentimes, to the point of suicide. It is said that Smile Dog takes on a terrifying form. Yeah, that thing that you see right the fuck there. And it haunts anyone who looks into its eyes. The only way to break the curse of Smile Dog is to send it to someone else. Much like a chainmail, and it's said that the original email is still being sent around to random email addresses by desperate, suicidal sufferers of the curse. So, if an anonymous person sends you an email with the subject line, "Smile," please, for the love of anything you might believe in, do not fucking open it.
And finally, number 1 on our list, Gateway of the Mind. Gateway of the Mind makes it to the top of our list for very good reason. Another science experiment gone wrong. It involves several scientists that purge a man of his 5 senses, that is to say, smell, taste, touch, sight, and hearing, respectively, based on a belief that a man with no contact with reality could perceive eternity and the presence of God. Though he retained all muscular and motor function, the man was now deaf, blind, and numb. All went well for 4 days until the man claimed to be hearing hushed voices. 2 days later, he began to communicate with his dead wife and could relay personal information about the scientists that only they or their closest relatives would know. And it doesn't get better. He became distressed, hurling himself against the walls, begging to be put to sleep via sedatives, and soon after to be killed. The next day, he started to claw at his non-functional eyes, was no longer able to form coherent sentences, and would tear chunks of flesh from his arm, desperate to make any sort of contact with the physical world. The scientists had no choice but to restrain him to a table so that he couldn't commit suicide. After a few hours, he ceased his screaming and struggling and simply stared at the ceiling. One of the scientists entered the room for more tests, and the man turned his head. Though he was blind, he focused one of his eyes on a scientist. He drew a breath and said, "I have spoken with God, and he has abandoned us." The man then died on the table. What terrifies me about this creepypasta is not only the story, which, while short, makes me want to hide under my blankets and cry like a bitch for several hours, but also the haunting question of whether or not this could actually happen. What if access to our senses was removed? What would we perceive? The answer will never be known, and the truth might just be more terrifying than we could ever imagine.
Well, that's our list. The links to the stories, if you're dumb enough to actually want to read them now, also known as their wiki pages, are below. We recommend that you take some time to read them for yourself, and get your nightmares, because you deserve them more than we do. But yeah, that's all we have. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to our page, like us on Facebook, all that fun social networking piece of shit human stuff that you guys do. Good fucking night.